selling is about people. And so I was literally just having this conversation earlier today in one of my group coaching calls with a woman who is wanting to sell her products and services to doctors' offices. And she was like, well, I think I'm going to go and do some drop-offs at their office and try to introduce myself. I said, that's great. And what I want you to think about is how many people do they get knocking at their door every single day trying to sell them something? And how are you going to stand out? How are you going to be different? How are you going to show that you've taken the time to really understand them and what they're needing and looking for?
Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Bryn Tillman and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients, so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to Making Sales Social. I'm really excited about our next guest. Our paths crossed, and when I learned a little bit about what she's doing, I was like, we need to have her on the show. Elise Archer empowers entrepreneurs and sales professionals to revolutionize how they sell, explode their income, and achieve quantum leaps in all areas of life, which I love. She's also the founder of Superhuman Selling and She Sells movements, which empower entrepreneurs and sales professionals to do all those things that we talked about. A Salesforce top influencer and thought leader whose insights have been featured in major media, including Forbes and Inc. Elise is passionate about empowering her clients to sell in a way that leverages their natural gifts. I love that. And helps them build wealth along the way. She is an international keynote speaker and host of She Sells Radio, where she shares best practices from female entrepreneurs and sales professionals who have accomplished extraordinary goals. Elise, welcome to Making Sales Social.
Thank you so much, Bryn. This is so fun. And I love what you're doing with the show and the podcast. And I think this is such an important conversation that a lot of people are wanting to have today. So I am super honored and excited to be here with you.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun and bring a lot of value to the listeners. So the first question we ask all of our guests before we dive into your expertise is, what does making sales social mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so funny. I remember back in, I think it was 2015 when I actually was the co-host of a podcast that was all about social selling. And at that time, it was newer and people weren't really talking about it as much. It was like, what is this thing, social selling? I think today people understand it at a greater level. But to me, at its core, whether you want to talk social selling about selling on LinkedIn or Instagram through social media, et cetera, to me, at its core, it's remembering that it's about people. Right? That selling is about people. And so I was literally just having this conversation earlier today in one of my group coaching calls with a woman who is wanting to sell her products and services to doctors' offices. And she was like, well, I think I'm going to go and do some drop-offs at their office and try to introduce myself. I said, that's great. And what I want you to think about is how many people do they get knocking at their door every single day trying to sell them something? And how are you going to stand out? How are you going to be different? How are you going to show that you've taken the time to really understand them and what they're needing and looking for, and make something personal, whether it's you have a QR code on your handout that's a personal video that shares exactly why you think it would make sense to have a conversation and talk, right? How can you do, we went through a couple of different ideas, but at the end of the day, no matter what the mechanism is for selling, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, email, door to door, doesn't matter. How can you have that human personal touch? And that's how I've always sold, no matter what the mechanism has been. I've sold literally every modality you can imagine. And I think the thing that wins and that will remain consistent is that human to human interaction and showing people that you've taken the time to care and add a personal touch. So that is, in my opinion, one of the most important things that makes sales social.
I think that's perfect. I mean, I think that's, and I love that you kind of encompass every touch, every sales touch is about, it's not just digital and social. So I think That's a
Yeah.
lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
one of the words that always jumps out to me is quantum leap into success. Talk to me a little bit about your journey and your quantum leap, and then kind of how that has influenced your business.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Well, if anyone is listening and gets frustrated when they hear people talk about, oh, make a vision board and put your goals on the vision board and then stare at it and it'll happen. I feel you, because that was me for a long time in my journey. And I've always been quote unquote successful. If you're not watching the video, I'm using air quotes right here. Started off in corporate media sales and then went out on my own as an entrepreneur in 2015, and was always probably successful by most people's standards. And what I found though is I wanted more for my life. And there was a period of time for over a decade, first in sales and then as an entrepreneur, where no matter what I did, I couldn't break past a certain income threshold. And I was doing all the right things. So I was I was doing very tactical, strategic coaching. I was putting the right funnels in place, doing the right scripts, again, doing all the right thing, investing a lot of money in trying to up level. And I had a more expansive vision for my life. I wanted to do things like retire my husband. He was working night shift at a hospital. I wanted to retire him so that he could have the freedom to pursue his dream of becoming a doctor. Wanted to give us more financial freedom to live a different lifestyle, to have kids. And also just wanted to feel more successful myself. But no matter what I did for over a decade, even though I worked really, really hard, I couldn't break past a certain income threshold. And what I realized finally was, it's kind of like you beat your head against a wall enough times, you realize maybe there's a different approach to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I was doing all the right things, but there was a gap in my identity. And although I wanted to be a woman who could run a 7-figure business, have time and location freedom, impact a lot of lives around the world, speak on the big stages, et cetera, my identity wasn't a match for that. So I started studying neuroscience. I started studying even quantum physics. Like I went there and I started really look at who I was being and my self-concept. And I realized I wanted all of these things, but I didn't feel worthy of them, if I was being honest. And so I went down a very intentional path right after our first son was born. He was 4 months old. I was reading Bronnie Ware's Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. I don't know if you've ever read it.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Amazing book if someone's listening and hasn't read it.
Really
And
help you to determine what really matters now.
yes.
Like,
Oh my gosh.
stop worrying about all those things and focus
Yes.
on the things that truly, truly matter. So just for anyone that hasn't read the book.
100%. Yeah. It's it's a clarifying book for sure. But I remember the first regret that she shared of these people sitting on their deathbeds was, I wish I had had the courage to live a life that was true to me rather than what everyone else told me I should be doing or thought I should be doing. And I realized how much of my power I was giving away to other people to tell me I was good enough. It's time to go. You can do it. And I realized no one is coming to give me permission to go for what I want. No one is coming to tell me I'm good enough or it's time. And so I said, at this moment of my life, I am decreeing, I am going for it. I'm going to play full out in my life, no matter how long I have left. Like I'm going for it. Long story short, because I know we got to keep it condensed here. Decided to get way out of my comfort zone. Hired a mentor to help me learn how to think differently, not how to take different actions, but how to think differently. This woman ran a multi-million-dollar business, working 3.5 hours a day, raising 3 little kids. And I was like, I need to know how to think like that. Think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And got massively out of my comfort zone with that investment. Within 6 weeks of practicing a different version of being and thinking differently, I 10x'd and I turned my annual income into my monthly income. And this was after being stuck for a decade, trying so hard. It wasn't a strategy. It wasn't that I created some perfect funnel. It was literally, I became a different person. So something I've learned since then is our results will never supersede our identity. So whatever goal it is that you have, whether it's to go from 6 to 7 figures, to launch an amazing podcast like what you have, Bryn, to whatever it is, you've got to look at what is the identity of the person who has those results, and then figure out where's the gap, right? Massive self-awareness. Where's the gap? And then how can I start thinking, feeling, and acting like the person who is there? Because from that place, that's how we manifest. That's how we manifest quantum leaps, but also sustainably do so. So again, it could be a much longer story than we have time for, but that's the quantum leap story. And we've got members of our community across the world doing their own version of that. And it's so inspiring to see.
So not to like ask you to give away your secret sauce, but when you work with someone and the first thing is, we've got to find your identity. What do you ask them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we teach something we call the 4 quadrants of quantum sales growth. And the first one we call mind over matter, which is this identity work. It's not what we think of with mind over matter, where it's like, oh, just push through it. It's no, literally your mind over physical 3D matter in your world. Like this is what influences everything. So the identity work is where we start. And what I'd say for anyone listening is, I would just write down, what would I love if there were no consequences or limitations, what would I love? And write that out almost as if you're scripting a movie scene of your career, of your life. And then from that place, look at, all right, who is the person who has that result? And it's going to be super sexy. You're going to make a spreadsheet. All right. So everyone get ready. You're going to get out a spreadsheet and you're going to write new personality across the top. So 3 columns, new personality, and then a column for thoughts, a column for feelings, and a column for action. So what are the thoughts I would be having from this place? What are the feelings I would be feeling from this goal achieved? And what are the actions I would be taking from this goal achieved? So we want to list all of that out. Now, this is where a lot of people get quantum leaping wrong, is they think like, oh, well, I just have to start doing that and look at that and it'll happen. Well, yes. And if you're not aware of where you're not currently showing up in relation to that, you're not going to shift. So we need to get awareness of where's there a gap. So I call this the identity gap. So on the other side of the spreadsheet, we're going to write old personality. So the old version of you, thoughts, feelings, and actions. And we just want to start to get aware. What thoughts am I thinking? Maybe it's thoughts of scarcity. Maybe it's thoughts of lack of confidence. What feelings am I feeling that I wouldn't be feeling if I was there? Anxiety, tension, fear, whatever it is. And then actions. What actions am I taking right now that I wouldn't be taking if I was there? Maybe I'm procrastinating. Maybe I'm holding back. Maybe I'm not doing the things. And then, so we want to start from there. It's like, we've got a starting point of where you are. Now we're going to start to make the shift. And I always tell my clients, like, again, we were on this call this morning and some of the women were like, I'm really uncomfortable right now. And I said, good, that's how you know you're growing and you're on the path, because the old version of you, that comfort zone that you used to operate within, it becomes a cage when you're really ready for growth and for expansion. So we're going to be breaking out of that and moving into a new identity. It will feel uncomfortable, but that's actually how you know you're on the right path. So there's more to it, but hopefully that's a good starting point for everyone. And it's an exercise literally anyone can do right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think, it's your own personal data. You started with like, we're thinking about like gathering all of who we are now and making that shift. There's a lot of times we don't even know who we are right now. So gathering this data, writing it down, like even as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, so what is my behavior and what does it make me feel? And I go, that one creates a little anxiety. That's a gap, right? Like, so I just think that's absolutely intriguing, and that really this is about transparency with yourself before you do anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's called metacognition in neuroscience. So we become aware of what we're thinking about. And it's that self-awareness that most of the time we're on autopilot. Again, we're not even thinking about it. So to the point, Bryn, of what you just did, that's exactly what it is. And you'll become aware, like, ooh, I didn't realize I showed up in that way, or I didn't realize how many thoughts of scarcity I was having. Well, you're never going to manifest abundance from scarcity. So if everyone's here listening because they want to grow sales, they want to grow revenue, you have to actually start to get into an energy of abundance if you want to create that growth. So we want to start to become aware. Where am I not thinking that way and feeling and acting that way, and start to make that shift? Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like that. Some of the challenge when I hear things like this is it feels a little like The Secret, right? Like
Mm,
the thought, if I just put it out there, it's going to come
yeah,
to me. But this is a little deeper than that, right?
yeah.
This is not just a mind shift, but you're talking about kind of once we've identified this, how do we apply it
Yes.
versus, yeah. So can you go one step deeper with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where people also may get turned off or feel like, oh, like I watched and I love The Secret. I think it covers a lot of this. But the piece where people get it messed up is, again, they think, oh, I'm going to put it on the vision. I'm looking at my vision board while I say this. So I do use tools like that. And well, I put it up there and that's all I need to do. No, because in life, we don't get what we want. We get what we are. So that's where the identity work is so critical, is to say, it's not, so wanting it is the starting point. Desire is the starting point. That's important. Trust your desires. Your desires are green lights. They're leading you to expansion. I 100% believe that. And you get to become a match for the person who has that. So let me think. I mean, even the vision that I shared of earlier, like being able to retire my husband from his work. So I've done that. We're actually in Maine. He's going to his dream medical school. We did all of that since I had my own quantum leap experience. But I had to become a woman who felt comfortable with that amount of money flowing in, with that amount of options coming in. I had to work through triggers and things that I didn't realize were even going to happen in terms of, not letting him stop, but creating a situation where he could stop working and pursue his dream. And I got to elevate as a person and notice, oh, when am I holding on to resentments or this or that? So all of this it's a continuous journey of self-awareness, right? And I think that's what's so important too here. But it's ongoing work. But so that's why, again, kind of circling back to your question about The Secret, it's one thing to want it. It's another thing to be it and to become it. And so the work doesn't stop either. When we hit another level of goals, we get to keep elevating and expanding into a higher self-concept. Does that make sense how I
Does, yeah.
framed it?
And and some of it is allowing yourself to be worthy of it.
Oh my
Right.
gosh, everything is the worthiness piece. I had no idea how important that was. But our level of income will never exceed our level of self-worth. And so when women come into our community, one of the biggest things I see on their intake is, I don't feel worthy of what I want. And that is the number one thing that we focus on, is you have to feel worthy of it, because the version of you who has it, let's just say it's a 10K month, a 50K month, a 100K month, she's not feeling unworthy of it. It feels normal and natural and like an of course. And so there's a lot of gunk we get to work through there in terms of limiting beliefs, old self-concepts, paradigms about money. And we work through all of that with the members of our community. But to your point, the worthiness piece is everything. And it's not entitlement, but it's worthiness. So there's a fine line there. Well, and it really makes the biggest difference.
So entitlement means that you're expecting that it just comes to you.
Yeah.
Worthy, I think, is if I work for it, I deserve to earn it. Right?
Yes.
Am I right there?
Yeah. So yes, and so it's
I love the improv.
Yes. Right. Anyone who's good in sales knows improv, right? Yes. And the piece, even the gap that I might close a little bit more there, is there can be a consciousness of, I have to work really hard in order to be deserving of what I want. And that's actually not worthiness, in my opinion. So there's a lot of indoctrination, especially about money, of like, you have to hustle really hard. You have to work really, really hard for it. I'm here to say, when I quantum leaped in 10X, I worked less. I actually worked less. My being shifted. I felt worthy of what I wanted. I was more intentional with my actions. I took bigger actions than I was taking before, but it wasn't hard work. It was aligned action. So I think there's a difference between hard work, consciousness, and aligned action. And that's where that self-awareness, so like making that spreadsheet, what actions would someone be taking who's bringing in that amount of money? But I also think I like to think of worthiness as I just am. And again, it's not entitlement. It's not like I think I'm a pretty humble person, and the people in our
Yes.
community who do this work are as well. But we are all worthy just because we are. So there's no, like, I don't have to do anything to prove it. I don't have to do anything to be deserving of it. From that place, I call this concept selling from wholeness. It's where you actually realize your implicit worthiness and who you are and how incredible you are. From that place, we let our results elevate. We let our results increase. We end up creating far greater results in our lives, but it's not about validation. It's not about needing it in order to feel good enough. It's about, I realize how whole and complete I am as I am right now. And then from this place, let me see how good life can get. Does that, and it's like stuff we could do a deep dive workshop into and go deeper. But
No, I
does that
love
make
it.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been listening to a book. I don't know if this is exactly it. 10x is easier than 2x,
Oh, yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you familiar with that?
Benjamin Hardy spoke at a mastermind. I was at years ago, and it's been,
Yeah.
I haven't read the book yet, but I've heard amazing things about it from.
So it's interesting, and I'm
Yeah.
about halfway through, but the consistent theme is you have to constantly give up 80% of what you're doing to focus on the 20%.
Yeah.
So meaning when you take inventory of all, like you said, you don't have to work harder. You just have to work more focused on the 20% and let go of the 80% that's not serving you.
Yeah.
So
It's about intention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kate Northrup talks about this too, and Do Less. I don't know if you've
Haven't heard.
heard of that one. It's for women specifically. It's a powerful book, but it's a similar theme where it's just, if you really look at what moves the needle, it's 20% of the things that you do. So to your point, it's like when everyone says the same thing, we might want to listen, right?
There might be some truth to this.
There might be some truth to that.
But I like that.
Yeah.
And the way that he describes it is you give up the 80%, you focus on the 20%. And when you feel capped, you give up 80% of that.
I love that.
Focus on the 20. So I just felt like it just fit in because it's what I'm currently listening to. I mostly listen to my books versus reading, but because I can multitask when I'm doing that. But it's a great one. And I love all these things that you're saying. So what is the very first tip that you would give to someone who's like, all right, this is intriguing me. I'm ready to go from 6 to 7 figures.
Sure.
I'm one of them right now that I'm thinking on
that. Yeah.
Just double what I'm doing and I'd be thrilled, right?
Yeah.
So personally, I'm like, oh, I want to jump into this deeper. But what is the first? Where did people get started? And then I'll ask how they get in touch with you. Before we talk about how to get in touch with you, like, how do you get started in making this shift in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first I'd say two things, especially if we're talking about that transition from 6 to 7. I think part of why I didn't do it for so long was I felt like I was working so hard at 6 figures that the thought of trying to go to 7 I was like, I don't even want to do this, right? So just knowing, and I really have seen this and I believe this firmly, it is easier to get to 7 figures than it is to get to 6. So if this is your goal or whatever multiple your goal is, just be in the energy of it's going to be easier. All right. Because you've already done the hard work figuring out all the things at the beginning. And then from there, I would really anchor into your why. And I mentioned this before, but it's so true. Your desires are green lights and they're also double blessings. So it's easy to give up when we're not anchored into a strong why and purpose. But, Simon Sinek does like the 5 levels of why. I like to do 7 levels, just keep going. Like, why does this matter? Why does this matter? Why does this matter? And falling so in love with the vision of what you're doing and remembering it's not just about you. It's about your family, your kids, the people you're going to inspire. We had a woman in the community this morning say, like, in just a week of doing this work, I used to fight with my husband all the time. I'm barely fighting with him. I'm seeing myself show up differently for my kids. And so it's like, this can happen just like that for you. So the blessing and the impact is about something so much greater than you. So tap into that.
Yeah.
Let that drive you and steer you. And I think from that really powerful emotional connection to our goal, that's also how we create and manifest it far more easily and more quickly as well.
Yeah, I love that. This was really inspirational. And I am sure there are a lot of people at the edge of their seat saying, I'm ready to take that next step. So if they are ready to take that next step, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Brent. I appreciate that. EliseArcher.com is the home of all the things, and more than happy to offer a complimentary call to anyone listening who wants to learn about going deeper, what that could look like. So that's EliseArcher.com/free call. And would love to connect with anyone who's ready for their own version of a quantum leap and talk through how that could happen. So that's a great place to go.
That's awesome. And just if you go there, there is a download 5 sales scripts to increase your closing 50% or more. I downloaded that. I recommend you do. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. I think the insights that you brought here, they're so different than what we're used to talking about, but I think that it will have a huge impact on our listeners. So thank you again. And to all our listeners, when you are out and about, don't forget to make your sales social.
Thanks for watching, and join us again for more special guest instructors bringing you marketing, sales training, and social selling strategies that will set you apart. Hit the subscribe button below to get the latest episodes from the Making Sales Social podcast. Give this video a thumbs up and comment down below on what you want to hear from us next. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.